Why do we need AI regulation? So essentially two approaches to that question. One is the problematic or the dark side of AI, so the problems that we try to identify, that we try to regulate. So AI has a number of problems that are broadly discussed in the media, like the lack of transparency, opacity, autonomous decision-making, which we do not understand, which may affect human rights of people, which may discriminate people, and so forth. So these problems are, I think, well described, and we simply do not know enough about AI. So in other words, AI regulation is trying to address that and make AI more reliable and better to understand, more accountable in a certain way. So from an economic perspective, we would say, is there any market failure that we need to address? Because if the market can, of course, regulate itself, then we don't need any regulation, but people do not understand it enough, and people do not trust AI enough. So this is the ultimate reason why we need regulation in this field. But there is a second reason why we talk about AI regulation as much, and I think that reason is equally important, but not so present in the current debate. That is, we need regulation also to promote AI, and sort of a more enabling role of the law to foster innovation, to bring innovation also to Europe or other parts of the world, and also to create level playing fields so that businesses can have a much more reliable legal system that enables them to bring their innovations to the market. The EU, with its AI Act, is really the first mover, also deliberate, wants to be the first mover on the world stage, to be the first creator of a big comprehensive AI scheme. Yeah, so the AI Act is really trying to govern and regulate and enable, and all of these together, artificial intelligence to, of course, regulate and prohibit those negative side effects of it, to bring more transparency to where it is a little bit problematic, and then as a third step also to promote competition and innovation in the field where AI is very helpful.
Da fällt einem sofort der AI Act ein, der eben risikobasierten Ansatz hat. Was man eben sagen kann, ist, dass es insbesondere sogenannte Hochrisikosysteme besondere Auflagen erfüllen sollen und diese Auflagen auch in Form einer Konformitätsprüfung eben überprüft werden sollen.
So the main hallmark of the AI Act is a risk-based approach. So it tries to classify different AI categories into how risky they are. So there's one very problematic box, which is the unacceptable risk category. That's prohibited. That's of course a small subset, but things that would directly affect human behavior in vulnerable situations, like social scoring systems, for example, would be prohibited. Then there is an extremely big category, which is the high-risk category, which is a problematic set of AI applications, and they are subject to a number of requirements. Then there is a minimal risk category, which is sort of less problematic. And then there is a completely unproblematic category of AI risk. And so the AI Act is trying to classify AI applications depending on where they belong to. And of course, it's then the staggered approach, because depending in which category you are, the requirements, regulatory regime is tougher in very simple terms on what it does with you. Yeah, high risk is a category which has two components. One is, if you like, a sectoral approach, certain things which are per se considered as being particularly risky. So, for example, healthcare, transportation, and other things which the lawmakers in Brussels think this is, per se suspicious or problematic to use AI in these fields. And then there is a much more specific case-by-case analysis, so you can also be declared risk-based for any particular activity that the lawmaker declares as being high risk. So there's one general category and then sort of more case-by-case. But I expect that over time we will get some sort of a more standardized understanding of what we understand by high risk. So if you are high risk, then one thing you need to do first is to have it assessed before you bring it into the market. So there is a conformity assessment that is being carried out. So whether you comply with the regulation, whether the application is safe and sound, and so forth. And that assessment, which is done by the national authority, is done before it's been put into the market. And once you get a certificate that, yes, your application is conform, only then you can put it into the market. But of course, you need to carry out things over the life cycle of the product. So you need to monitor, you need to be transparent about the application, you need to inform the users about the purpose and the technical details, and you need to monitor whether your application is consistent with the original purpose of what you do. And there are also obligations on the user, right? So what I've just described is what the developer or the producer, if you like, has to do, but there are also a number of obligations on the user, him or herself, who obviously has to use the product in line with the intended use and shouldn't be misusing it, and so forth. Also needs to comply with a number of requirements. So once you are a limited risk AI, then you are mostly subject to transparency requirements, and you need to comply to certain technical standards. How do you get into it? It's basically a self-assessment way, right? So you can, of course, ask for voluntary assessment, voluntary certification if you'd like to, but it's de facto a self-assessment that you have to take your own risk. In practical terms, I believe that many developers will shy that risk and will try to get approval from the national authorities that indeed their project is in that category.
Was daran vielleicht noch wichtig ist, ist, dass dieses Regulierungspaket eben vorsieht, dass in der EU harmonisierte Normen entwickelt werden, die eben die Grundlage auch für die Konformitätsprüfung sind, und in denen wird sich dann sehr viel genauer zeigen, welche Maßnahmen tatsächlich notwendig sind für Unternehmen und für einzelne Einsatzkontexte oder Bereiche. So übergeordnet kann man vielleicht dazu noch sagen, dass die KI-Verordnung sich selbst das formulierte Ziel gibt, die Grundrechte, die Sicherheit und Gesundheit der Menschen in diesem Zusammenhang eben zu wahren, was schon sehr große Worte sind, finde ich, oder es ist ein sehr großes Anliegen. Und man sicherlich auch darüber diskutieren kann, ob die Entwürfe das tatsächlich umfangreich sicherstellen.